1-2, Freddy's coming for you, and there's no escaping him, as ever since the 80s, horror movie fans have been captivated and obsessed with this iconic, ghoulish movie boogeyman. In 1984, Robert Englund breathed life into the terrifying dream demon, Freddy Krueger. A hideously burnt maniac with a knife glove who targets the teenagers of Elm Street after their parents lynched him due to the evils he committed when he was alive, which left him with his burnt look and undead status, creating one of the most successful horror movie franchises, which also put movie company New Line Cinema on the map. So to celebrate what is arguably the greatest horror movie boogeyman ever, today we're going to do a countdown of my least favourite to favourite Freddy movies. Yep, from worst to best. So, let's check it out. Bitch! Welcome back to Elm Street for the ultimate Nightmare on Elm Street countdown, where I'll be ranking every movie from the series, because sometimes we just need a good rank. But I'm not a ranker or anything, no. Oh, and just a reminder, this is all just my opinion. Not saying any of this is fact, but just how I see the franchise from my own ocular spheres. So, if there's a movie that you like that's rated quite low, don't get offended and be all like, "Oh, darn you, Minty, you've ruined my life! Because of your list, my car broke down, my wife left me, I lost my house, and somebody pooped in my mailbox. You've done this on purpose just to annoy me." No. Likewise, if there's an entry that's quite high up that you don't like, just remember, it's all subjective on my part. So, let's return to Springwood and check it out. Number 9, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake. Oh boy, what a dreary and depressing attempt at retelling the legend of A Nightmare on Elm Street this was. Ugh. So basically, it's the first movie all over again, but told through a 2000s lens. Only, it's really boring. The acting is flat, the movie itself doesn't even look appealing, the colours are muted, with a really unflattering filter put over the picture. But above all, it doesn't have any of the flair or sass of the original. For example, I actually really like Jackie Earle Haley and think he's a great actor, but I think they wanted his Freddy Krueger to feel more grounded in reality and like a real deranged serial killer. And so instead what we get is a watered down diet soda Freddy, one that's just really not as memorable or menacing, and well, who wants to see that? At not one moment was I at all terrified of this Freddy Krueger or saw him as any kind of threat. His makeup also looks pretty terrible too. It is just so dull and so bland and so generic, it's almost painful just what an empty, soulless shell of a movie this is. It's also very overly dramatic, where it's trying to be as realistic as possible. Now yes, the 1984 original was a serious movie, but it also had a sort of comic book flair about it too, as it knew that you could only take the believability of a serial killer hunting you in your dreams so far. So best to add a touch of ghoulish fun without being too overly dramatic, or trying to act too much like this is the real world. Whereas the 2010 remake tries to have its cake and eat it and do both. But ultimately, what we are left with is a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which I think pretty much everyone forgot about pretty quickly, and a movie that original Freddy actor Robert Englund also really didn't like. And well, if he didn't like it, then it mustn't be any good. So that was my look into the 2010 remake, or as I like to call it, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the boring cardboard box version. Number 8, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Okay, so this is where things in the franchise just got goofy. So after Freddy had been around for a while, by the time we got to the 6th movie, it was decided that Freddy had run out of steam and that it was time to kill him off. Which is a brave move, I'll give it that. And it could have worked if it was really epic and impactful. Like, if you're gonna kill off Freddy Krueger, you better give him like the most ultimate death ever put to screen. Or otherwise, just don't. Sadly, it was neither epic or impactful. Instead, oddly, it was decided to turn this movie into a comedy. Now, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies had increasingly started to become a bit more comical with its humour over the years. But for Freddy's Dead, they dial the oddball comedy up to 11, to the point where Freddy is dressed up as the Wicked Witch from The Wizard of Oz and is playing with a power glove.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too! Now I'm playing with power!
God, we've gone from one Freddy movie that's just way too over-dramatic to another one which is the opposite, just ridiculously silly. Which just goes to show when it comes to these movies, you've really got to perfect the formula and get the balance right. Now, it is okay for Freddy to utilise some humour, sure, but by this stage he was basically a cartoon character and, well, hard to take seriously or even be scared of. It's just an interesting choice to decide to go in the direction of a comedy for a film that's supposed to be Freddy's final movie. His swan song. Freddy's Dead also gets quite surreal and has its moments where it feels like a John Waters or David Lynch movie, which, once again, is fine, but why wait till the last movie to go in this direction? And to make matters worse, it was decided to make the movie's last act in 3D, where we learn the true villains of the entire Freddy franchise was these weird demon sperm or whatever the heck they are, I guess. Bottom line is, the movie wasn't the end and Freddy did come back, making Freddy's Dead completely null and void. I think the writing was on the wall from the very start that this was not going to be a great Freddy movie, where despite the movie having some interesting ideas, like Freddy coming face to face with his grown-up daughter who must defeat him, at the end of the day, the movie was not made out of love or passion, but rather the opposite. Simply because New Line Cinema lost confidence in Freddy Krueger and just wanted to wrap everything up. Number 7, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. So in the later part of the 80s, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were on a winning streak, with part 3 and 4 being hugely successful. However, by the time you get to part 5, it feels like the franchise got a little bit tired and exhausted and needed a little bit of a rest after making that 4th movie. Like as if the powers that be put everything and the kitchen sink into A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, the production just needed a rest and to recharge its creative batteries before making Part 5. But nope! The A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise was a huge moneymaker back then, and I guess New Line Cinema had to keep bankrolling this franchise. So, in my opinion, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is the tired malaise that comes after the triumphant 3rd and 4th entries. Now, I do appreciate that this time they went for a dark, gothic horror look, giving this movie its own unique, distinct gothic feel. I don't know if that's because it was made at the same time and by the same studio as Batman. I don't know. And also that in this entry, the movie explores controversial issues like teen pregnancy and eating disorders, topics that were touchy for their time. And the idea of Freddy possessing a fetus and planning a rebirth is a fascinating concept. But other than that, yeah, the movie just feels exhausted and just lacking in imagination and energy. I mean, let's not forget this was the movie that had the infamous Super Freddy sequence. And then there's the kid who played Jacob, the manifestation of the fetus that Freddy is possessing. And look, there was just something about this kid that rubbed me the wrong way, and in my opinion, for such a unique concept, the way it was presented in the film just kind of felt a bit boring and lackluster. Although, the movie still does have some creative kills, so I'll give it that. So A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child is an okay Freddy movie. Definitely not the best, but definitely not the worst. It just is. But if you're having a Freddy marathon where you want to watch all the best of Freddy Krueger, it's probably one you can skip. Number 6, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. So this is where things get really interesting, as we get to A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, or as it's commonly known as, the Gay A Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Okay, so for years, this Freddy entry had just been shrugged off as a terrible movie, or one of the franchise's low points. But in recent years, more and more people have gone back to it and have said, you know what, it's actually not that bad. In fact, this is actually quite a unique entry in the franchise. Now, there is a lot to complain about. Like, what even were those weird dog creature things? What's up with the exploding parakeet? Not to mention the biggest sin of all, Freddy entering the real world and attacking kids at a pool party, going against the golden rule of the mythology of Freddy only being confined to the dream world. But, you know, look, this was the second installment. Maybe we can put this down to the myth wasn't fully realised yet. But above all though, there's the movie's main plot of Freddy possessing a teenage boy called Jesse Walsh, whose family has just moved into Nancy Thompson's home. And it's since come out, no pun intended, that there are huge gay subtexts in the movie, and Jesse's possession by Freddy is an allegory of Jesse coming to terms with his sexuality. Now, in my opinion, the main thing that lets the movie down is the writing, as certain things are just left unclear or don't really make much sense. Like the as-mentioned parakeet scene. The only scene in movie history that tries to make a parakeet, of all things, threatening and scary. Oh no, look out for that tiny little bird, it's gonna give you a little cut. Oh, heaven forbid. Where we see this parakeet attack Jesse's family, where it then randomly explodes. Why is the parakeet attacking the family? Is it possessed by Freddy? Did Freddy enter its dreams? Is it a birdemic? And why did it explode? I don't know. I don't even know if the movie itself knows either. But regardless, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is so unique and a lore unto itself, you really do have to see it just to see how different and fascinating it truly is. Yeah, I recommend this one. Number 5, Freddy vs. Jason. Okay, I get it. Freddy vs. Jason may not be a masterpiece, but to me, one thing it is lots of fun. And it is! This film is a rollicking good time that celebrates both the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and the Friday the 13th franchise, and puts both those franchises' boogeymen, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, against each other in an epic, bloody cinematic showdown. Finally! Now, an on-screen smackdown between Freddy and Jason had been promised ever since 1993, when Freddy shows up at the end of Jason Goes to Hell. But this battle of the movie creeps didn't come out until 10 years later in 2003. So the basic premise is Freddy Krueger is stuck in hell and all the people of Springwood have forgotten about him. So he sends Jason Voorhees out to kill a heap of kids so everyone will think that it's Freddy doing this and will remember him and he'll be able to come back and have full power. But as it happens, Jason gets carried away with the killing, which angers Freddy as he can't claim their souls, and the rate that Jason is hacking people up, there won't be any left for Freddy. So now Freddy has to stop Jason. Boom! There's your conflict. These two are now fighting. Now, yeah, there are problems here. My personal gripe is that Freddy really only gets one kill in the movie, and Freddy vs. Jason just doesn't feel as grand or as epic as it should have been, considering it's a movie about Freddy fighting Jason Voorhees. Look, I don't know, to me it just should have felt bigger. That and the human characters are all bland and disposable, and you won't remember any of them by the time the end credits roll. But I can't stress this enough. I just love how fun this movie is. It's a leave your brain at the door, B horror movie. And Robert Englund is just as energetic and magnetic as Freddy, which is amazing, as at this point he had now been playing the part for 19 years. And I also really like how the movie also makes it a battle of the elements. Freddy Krueger represents fire, and Jason Voorhees represents water, an observation that others have also made. And there is a double threat, as Jason can kill these kids in the real world, and Freddy will kill them in the dream world, so there's no escaping this battle. Number 4, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Okay, so this is where things get extremely meta, and even a little experimental, as we see A Nightmare on Elm Street's creator, Wes Craven, return to the world of Freddy Krueger. After the disappointing As Mentioned Freddy's Dead, where Freddy had basically become a cartoon character, a character who wasn't so much scary anymore but more of a figure of fun. It's just refreshing having Freddy Krueger's daddy coming back and saying, "Oh no, Freddy isn't a comical cartoon, he's a terrifying force to be reckoned with."
Miss me.
Now, in the movie itself, a Nightmare on Elm Street actress, Heather Langenkamp, plays herself, living in the real world, where the Nightmare on Elm Street movies exist and have a huge fan base, where the fictional concept of Freddy Krueger starts to invade the real world, and is particularly going after Langenkamp's son. In order for the actress to save her son, she has to play Nancy one last time and face the menacing terror of Freddy Krueger. Now, the movie goes into surreal territories when trying to explain why this is happening. Heck, even Wes Craven himself shows up in the movie to try and tell us what's going on. Now, I'm not entirely too sure, but I think what the movie is about is an ancient evil that's always been around and is now taking on the form of Freddy Krueger due to the popularity of the Freddy movies. So basically, Freddy Krueger is the devil, I guess.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
But to me, I think the movie explores themes of the effects horror movies, and even movies in general, have on society and our behaviours. So in that regard, Wes Craven's new Nightmare is kind of like a precursor to his next movie, Scream. Bottom line is, if you like your Freddy movies to be a bit more intellectual and to make you think rather than cheering the blood splatter, then Wes Craven's new Nightmare may be the nightmare for you, as it will always be known as the Freddy movie that leaves the fictional world and apparently crashes its way into the real world. Number 3, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master is often known as the MTV Freddy movie, or the kinetic Freddy movie, in that it's fast, full of energy, like it's a hyperactive, energetic music video, and just has a lot of confidence about it. Basically, this is the series at its peak, and moves with a swagger. Like it knows the franchise it's based off has now become a phenomenon and there's nothing stopping it.
How's this for a wet dream?
The Dream Master also just feels a little bit more polished this time. And whereas it does start to use more humour, at the same time it also doesn't overdo it. Part 4 definitely gets the blend right between being a scary slasher movie and also having a little bit of fun with it and adding necessary humour. So this time we see Freddy resurrected, again, this time by the power of dog pee. Yes, that really happened. Where he's now finished off all the Elm Street kids and is searching for new victims, where we meet the character Alice, a nerdy girl from high school who must transform and become a badass warrior in order to defeat Freddy. This time the filmmakers really let loose with their imaginations, giving us some of the most memorable and unique set pieces and visuals in the franchise's history. I mean, I'll never forget the haunting scene of seeing Freddy Krueger literally eating his victims on a pizza. Damn! And you thought pineapple was bad. Although the less we say about a scene where a character is fighting thin air because the production ran out of money, the better. Either way, this entry is truly a good time, and probably the most visually impressive movie in the series, and is definitely a must for Freddy Krueger fans. Number 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3: The Dream Warriors. Okay, so the third entry is what I consider to be the rock concert of Freddy movies. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3: The Dream Warriors. After the disappointing reception and deviations to the lore in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Wes Craven himself returned to work on the script, as did Heather Langenkamp, who returned to play her iconic role of Nancy, with this entry feeling like a true sequel to the first movie. Set several years after that first film, Nancy is now a therapist at a psychiatric ward for troubled teens. The teens in question are the last children of Elm Street, whom Freddy is hunting down in order to get revenge over their parents' actions. Now yes, admittedly most of the movie is set in a hospital, mainly consisting of white corridors. But what makes this movie so brilliant is the characters, without a doubt the characters. Each member of the gang of kids, aka the Dream Warriors, are unique and are instantly iconic and memorable and really likeable, like you're really rooting for these kids. The characters are also written and performed really well, and it's fun exploring the concept of the kids taking charge and getting their own supernatural powers in the dream world. Having the Nancy character associated with the movie definitely feels like a passing of the torch, even though all these characters get killed off in the next movie, but still, it feels right here and it gives the Nancy character an iconic and appropriate send-off. I think this is the entry where the filmmakers also started to get really creative and jump leaps and bounds with ways Freddy can go after his prey. The two most iconic visuals is probably where Freddy becomes a TV and says,
"Stop the prime time, bitch!"
and the phallic-looking Freddy snake. Also, just like a true great sequel, this entry adds to the Freddy lore, where we learn of his backstory and why he is so evil. He was purely born evil. And just like the first movie, it brilliantly shows the disconnect between youth and adults, where it's the parents and authority figures who don't believe them and shrug them off because they're young, as they feel like their worries and anxieties are nonsense, and also have this sense of, we know best. We know what's good for you kids. Just shut up and do as we tell you to. You know, this idea of do it our way. Just comply and take the medication. And often in the Freddy movies, the teenagers die because they aren't believed and are let down by the adults who shrug them off, believing that the kids are just being silly and that they know best. And when you think about it, that is kind of the true horror of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. The parents and the adults in general got their kids into this situation in the first place, but refused to believe them and leave them to fend for themselves. There definitely is themes in these movies of children having to pay for the crimes or sins, if you will, of their parents, creating the ultimate reality of teenage isolation. Also, the Dawkins song Dream Warriors. Do I need to say more? And in addition to that, in this movie, look out for early performances by Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne, who for some reason was credited as Larry. Number 1, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 1984 original. And of course, the number 1 spot goes to the movie that started it all, the original A Nightmare on Elm Street, which came out in 1984. What started as a vision by Wes Craven, inspired by an article he read about someone dying in their sleep from nightmares, would become this ambitious horror movie, and thus a legend was born. Keep in mind, this original movie was filmed with a very low budget, but its budget doesn't get in the way of the movie's ambitions or momentums. So yeah, in the original movie, a group of kids of Elm Street are suffering nightmares of a ghoulish man with burn scars who is terrorizing them in their dreams. One of them even being a young Johnny Depp. The irony is, after his latest marriage, this wouldn't be the most horrific thing to happen to Johnny Depp's bed. Okay, I swear I got that from a meme somewhere. Nancy has to find a way to face the monster of her dreams, but her alcoholic mum refuses to help her, and her stern dad, who's a cop, who's more about order and authority, also refuses to believe her. Going back to what I just said before about these movies really being about the sins of the parents, or the sins of bad parenting, and refusing to accept or listen to their children. One thing you'll notice about this first entry is that it's a little darker, grittier, and grimier than the Freddy movies that followed, particularly as the series got more successful and commercial. This one feels like it has a rough, almost grindhouse feel to it, and it really works in the movie's favour, creating a truly gritty, dirty, and nerve-wracking atmosphere. And this movie does have atmosphere in droves. Freddy is also a little bit more brutal and nasty here. Yeah, he can have off-the-cuff humorous moments, but generally he's a serious, brutal killer. A menacing ghoul who is evil personified. An unforgiving demon who takes great joy and delight in causing harm to others and will literally do anything to finish off his prey once and for all, by all ways of imaginative means. Interestingly, Freddy Krueger was originally intended to be an elderly man, and was going to look slightly different, as you can see here with this makeup test with British actor who was originally cast as Freddy, David Warner. But when they hired that nerdy guy from V as Freddy, they really struck gold, as Robert Englund just injected so much flair and distinct personality into the part, making him the ultimate villain that we all love to watch, and instantly becoming a cinematic icon. And if you think the idea of someone other than Robert Englund playing Freddy is weird, then just check out the character's original hat. Oh god. Man, that is just all kinds of wrong.com. To me, this first Nightmare on Elm Street is definitely the scariest, and just really gives me the heebie-jeebies. There's just something quite disturbing about a killer preying on you in your sleep, when you're at your most vulnerable, in a reality-bending domain where Freddy's victims have absolutely no control of their environment, with this killer able to use this reality at his will to do whatever horrific things that he wishes to do to his prey. Really creepy, eerie stuff, and really the work of genius horror storytelling. So in my opinion, when it comes to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, still to this day nothing beats the original, as although a great series followed, the first movie was just that little bit more brutal and scarier, and definitely the Freddy movie that's going to leave you with a long-lasting gut punch. This movie truly is a masterpiece of fiction and cinema, and I absolutely love it. To me, A Nightmare on Elm Street is the ultimate movie series to watch on Halloween, and I've always considered this film series to be the gold standard in 1980s slasher films. In my opinion, they're just that little bit better and that little bit more polished than your Friday the 13th and Halloweens. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I have a message for you.
Happy Halloween! Bitch!